Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, I guess there it is. There's been so much fighting over the years. I mean, there was a multi-million-dollar commission set to investigate who's to blame, solely to blame, for the events of January 6th, of course, with the intention of pointing the finger solely at Donald Trump. It's all his fault. Well, despite all the effort after all this time, in search of an answer, well, I guess in a way the process gets a little bit simplified, as Nancy Pelosi is caught on tape essentially taking total responsibility. I guess the debate's over, right? A very unfortunate little clip here for little old Nancy Pelosi. Let me update you guys on everything that's going on, what everyone's talking about. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so we've got a secret Nancy Pelosi recording coming up, absolutely. Stay tuned for that, but before we play that clip, there's a dynamic here, you know? There's a left versus right dynamic. A Trump versus the machine dynamic. Trump gave this interview to MSNBC, I think maybe in 2022. Take a look.
By the way,
on that day,
Nancy Pelosi, I don't have, why would I tell you that? Listen, Nancy Pelosi was in charge of security. She turned down 10,000 soldiers. If she didn't turn down the soldiers, you wouldn't have had January 6th.
Did you call military or law enforcement?
What?
Did you call military or law enforcement at the moment the Capitol was under attack?
I'm not going to tell you anything. Let me put it this way. I behaved so well. I did such a good job. Nancy Pelosi turned down 10,000 soldiers. If she didn't do that,
but
and now
Nancy
I understand.
Pelosi doesn't have the authority that
the
you
police
have as commander-in-chief, though.
Listen to me, Kristen. Listen to me. I understand that the police testified against her. The chief very strongly against her. Capitol Police, great people. They testified against her, and they burned all the evidence. Okay, they burned all the evidence. They destroyed all the evidence about Nancy Pelosi.
What do you say to people who wonder why you as commander-in-chief, you have authorities that Nancy Pelosi doesn't have as commander-in-chief?
No, she has authority over the Capitol.
Why didn't you send help in that moment, though?
Frankly, just so you understand, I assumed that she took care of it. She turned down.
So when you realized that the National Guard wasn't coming?
Well, you don't realize anything until quite a while. National Guard not coming. I asked it to be there 3 days in advance, and she turned it down.
She says that request was never officially made.
Oh,
just so you know.
Let me just tell you.
Let me ask you about pardons, Mr. President.
The mayor of D.C. gave us a letter saying that she turns it down. Okay, we have it. Nancy Pelosi also was asked, and she turned it down. The police commissioner
I'm talking about
Capitol
the day
Police,
of,
wait a minute.
Yep.
Capitol Police said that he wanted it, and Nancy Pelosi wouldn't accept it. She's responsible for January 6th.
Mr. President.
Nancy Pelosi's responsible.
Mr. President,
and the
you're the president, though. You have authorities that no one else has as the commander-in-chief. Do you think you showed leadership on that day?
Yes, absolutely, I did.
Okay.
Turns out he had a point or two. The typical left-wing deceptive media interview, where the conversation is always purposely steered on blaming everything on Donald Trump. Oh, don't speak about Nancy Pelosi. Do you think that you showed good leadership? The emphasis is always to blame everything on Trump. It was all Donald Trump's fault. But of course, as everybody knows, and as we've learned, and as people have been saying for years at this point, which has mostly fell on deaf ears, Capitol security falls under the responsibility of the Speaker of the House, who at that point was Nancy Pelosi. It's up to her to coordinate with the House Sergeant-at-Arms in matters of securing the Capitol. And well, I guess this video now proves it.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
Nancy Pelosi says straight up, I take responsibility. Hey, that's exactly what we've been saying. This idea that Trump is to blame for everything and he should be fully prosecuted over the actions of other people, well, it's wrong. Nancy Pelosi and everybody else whose responsibility it was to secure the Capitol, they had the intelligence. They knew there was going to be a protest. They knew that those protesters weren't happy. They had specific intelligence warning them of rogue groups, let's say threatening to engage in mischief. They knew all that and they did nothing. Well, I wouldn't say nothing. My view is they did nothing, then allowed the events to transpire so they could film their dramatic documentary behind the scenes, so they could drop clips like this ahead of the election in the hopes that it makes them look more favorable. Unfortunately, it doesn't. This clip's already starting to backfire big time. Nancy Pelosi actually responded. Here's what she had to say.
Why do you think this is stirred up and a brouhaha on the right and in some corners of the media today?
Well, because of the fact is that the President of the United States, the former president, and his toadies do not want to face the facts. They're trying to do revisionist history on January 6th.
No, it doesn't prove the point that we've been making. No, of course not. And anybody saying that, well, they're engaging in revisionist history on the events of January 6th. Give me a friggin' break. Revisionist history. So us interpreting your words literally as you say them is revisionist history, but you and your Democrat colleagues claiming that Donald Trump incited a riot and engaged in insurrection when the only evidence that we have is evidence of Donald Trump telling people to remain peaceful, telling people to go home, telling people not to engage in violence, respect law and order, and respect law enforcement. Yeah, that's real history and not revisionist history. Give me a freaking break. These people are the biggest hypocrites, it's not even funny. They're full of it. Our interpretation of this Nancy Pelosi clip isn't revisionist history, it's accurate history. How unfortunate for little old Nancy Pelosi. Ex-Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund really helps put it all into perspective, helps us understand that our interpretation here isn't revisionist history. He retweeted the video and said, Pelosi was surprised that we didn't have National Guard on January 6th. I was denied National Guard support multiple times before January 6th and repeatedly for 71 minutes on January 6th. My story hasn't changed. And of course, we've heard Stephen Sund's story. Again, keep in mind this was the ex-chief of Capitol Police. He was the chief of police in charge of Capitol security on January 6, 2021.
By federal law, Congress passed a law that requires me to go to the Sergeant Arms Capitol Police Board in advance of an event and to request federal resources such as the National Guard. So Congress passed a law. It's 2 U.S. Code 1970. Look it up. Just make sure you look it up before December 22 when they changed it. So what was in effect on the 6th? That requires me to go and get approval for bringing in National Guard or federal assistance in advance. I have to go to the Capitol Police Board and get approval from congressional leadership in advance, like I did on January 3rd. I'm denied twice because of optics and because the intelligence didn't support it. So think about that.
Let me ask you a question. Who made that decision? Who denied you?
I was denied by Paul Irving, House Sergeant Arms, and also Mike Stinger.
He says his story has not changed. So the question is, how can we possibly blame Donald Trump, the guy who told everybody to peaceably assemble? How can we blame him for all the wrongdoing? Give me a break. When the chief of Capitol Police, on the day of, when he was requesting National Guard, they refused him outright. Who refused him? The House Sergeant at Arms who works for, ding ding ding, Nancy Pelosi.
I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
We're talking about the US government here, folks. They know how human psychology works better than anybody else. There was a bunch of discontent Trump voters outside the Capitol. They understand the concept of mob mentality, how quickly you can trigger a mob with just a couple bad actors. They knew the potential risks, and you're telling me they put up this flimsy little barrier despite all the warnings in the media and all the legitimate potential security threats popping up from their intelligence briefings. Give me a break. The left simply has no argument left on the issue of January 6th. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.